in the same boat with frequently forgetting to record. So I'm sure we've all done it. So thanks a lot, Rebecca, and thanks everybody for joining this morning. I know I just want to recognize, again, just reiterate what a challenging time, I think, personally, professionally, organizationally, for all of us. And we really appreciate your flexibility. And we hope to just use this time to reinforce just our commitment to supporting you all wherever you are, to share some additional information on flexible models, to potentially provide some new ways of thinking or approaching this opportunity, and also to answer questions that you might have. I'll also just want to reiterate, we really appreciate just the responsiveness that everybody has shown. We recognize, again, there's just so much on everybody's plate. And I'm also, I know Rebecca and I personally have chatted, and many of us are dealing with that back to school drama, not knowing what that looks like, and all while balancing likely back to school challenges with your programming as well. And so we hear you, we honor that, and we're here to help. So we'll talk, just give a quick status update. We'll talk about some different program models. I really hope that really kind of your biggest takeaway from today, hopefully, can be just around flexibility. There's flexibility and support inherent in this opportunity, and so just be communicative, and know that the opportunity can look much different than it did when you applied back in January. And then we'll talk through next steps. Of course, at any time, feel free to speak up and ask any questions or provide any feedback that you might have. Rebecca and Lauren will keep an eye on the chat box window as well to make sure that we're asking or addressing any questions or concerns. All right, so I wanted to show you guys my project plan for every single project that I'm managing. And I wonder if this looks like something similar to what you all have gone through as well, where we basically are doing a whole lot of starting and stopping, waiting and seeing if the numbers go down, they go up, we get color coded to purple or green. We're allowed back in the office, we're not. Our funder is showing up, they're not. And so just recognize, I saw this on I saw this online, it was months ago, and I thought it was really relevant at the time, and kind of internally shed a little tear thinking about how relevant it still is 5 months down the road. So again, we just recognize that everybody's projects and plans related to probably this project and all projects are just looking a little wonky these days. So again, a big thanks to everybody for being so responsive. Lauren and Rebecca and I have had the opportunity to have phone calls with almost everybody in the cohort, which has been really great just to connect with all of you. And we heard a lot of recurring themes. So most folks kind of did that, went fully remote with their work offices, and then physically were working from home or remotely in some way. And then attempted or really did some amazing things with delivering program remotely. We heard about a lot of staff furloughs or adjustments. We're also lately have heard from some folks that are back in the office and they're figuring out what that looks like. Or shifting on and off one person or half staff in, half staff out. Some folks are still able to provide some in-person services with some, adjustments related to protocols or much smaller groups. Lots of us have had a shift in priorities, whether it's related to the project or even just other organizational priorities, recognizing that they just need to make some shifts. And some major themes that we heard is we just recognize that it was an incredibly, of course, the timing of something like this is never ideal, or is never going to be easy, but recognizing that many of us missed some very major in-person fundraisers with the push to go remote in March. So missing all of the spring and the summer is just recognize that both that you're missing the funding, and then that also just puts us in a position of significant financial uncertainty. And for all of us, hearing a just a limited ability to focus on SBV. Just, hey, we are focused on keeping the doors open, serving our clients, and keeping as many staff on board as we can. We're not able to really focus on our project, and so we hear that. And so we want to kind of come together and just talk about both different ways that you might engage. And we also want to reiterate that that pro bono resources and skills-based volunteering can be a resource in this new reality for you. So if your original project was focused on data or technology or marketing, but now what you really need is crisis communications, let's have that conversation. We can completely transition the focus of your project in whatever way works best for you. That's certainly not to pressure folks if you just feel like this isn't something you can wrap your minds around, but we are working with lots of nonprofits that are utilizing SBV to address this new challenging time. All right, so I just want to also reiterate one of the things that we did hear from a few folks is just kind of how's the rest of the cohort doing? Are other folks really cruising along? And the reality is that we're all kind of starting from scratch. We all were really picking up momentum in March and looking forward to a really exciting in-person boot camp. And then, of course, weren't able to do that. And so everybody is really starting from scratch at this moment in time. Everybody's had shifts in priorities and certainly limited capacity. So we're all thinking about how we can really narrow the scope of our projects, and also dealing with some financial and resource uncertainty. So just as an example, I was working with a nonprofit via another program that wanted to work with a group of volunteers to scope out a new client management system. So find the right technology solution to manage their client data, and they're on a year-long spending freeze, and so no longer have the budget allocated for that. So it just doesn't make sense for them to move forward with that project. And so we're just recognizing that there's a lot of uncertainty, particularly just and it could even be related to your specific project. So to address that, we can really rescope or refocus our projects, both kind of the model that we might have been considering and also the priority or the focus area. So you're certainly have the flexibility to go in a completely new direction. We can pare down our projects, and we'll talk about what some of those models look like, but we could certainly really narrow the scope so that it requires just less time and capacity from the nonprofit side. And we can think about how we might be able to focus our SBV resources on these new realities and needs. So if you're, for example, thinking about how to transition an event or meetings or something like that completely virtual, and you could use some tips or tricks on that, that could be an SBV project in and of itself. All right, so before we dive into just talking about highlighting a few program models, I'm going to pause and see if Rebecca and Lauren, if you guys have anything to share or kind of reflections on kind of the status of the cohort or what you guys have heard. And I know, Rebecca, you're obviously in contact with lots of nonprofits in Ohio as well. And so I just want to give space to make sure that it feels like we're kind of accurately capturing things.
Yeah, no, I think you did a great job of capturing some of those challenges. And I would also add that those challenges are not unique to this group. Those challenges are pretty representative across the board in terms of the nonprofit sector in Ohio. So, everybody's kind of in the same boat, and a lot of people have similar challenges there. So that's why, again, we appreciate your commitment to this and learning about some new models so that you can really use SBV to address some of the challenges that you might have.
I just wanted to weigh in and thank everyone who met with me. I think it's my computer causing a problem. I'm going to go on mute.
Oh, darn. That is always a bummer. So let us know, Lauren, if you can ping back in. We'd love to hear from you. So Great. Let's and then if folks do have anything else to share from the chat box window or anything, feel free to chime in there as well. So I'm going to highlight kind of 4 different models. And I want to reiterate, I'm going to kind of, I'll of course provide some information on the background and the structure of these models. But I want to reiterate that none of your projects have to fit exactly in kind of one of these boxes. We saw some really neat things, particularly last year with the cohort, where they kind of took these concepts and tweaked them, and the reality looked just a little bit different. They kind of they approached it in a more flexible way, which is really great. And I'll share some more tangible examples of that. So we'll talk about the pro bono hotline, which is, I would say, at the really lightest end of the spectrum in terms of the commitment and lift. It's just a really quick hit type project. There's the day of service, which can last really anywhere from 3 to 6 hours, and is something that we've seen actually transition very well virtually. You can still consider a team or a group project. And then, of course, Capacity Commons is an ongoing resource for all nonprofits, and particularly for folks in this cohort to consider. Again, just consider these a guide or a recommendation or a starting point. All right, so we'll talk really quickly about the pro bono hotline. This is a model that Common Impact launched at the beginning of kind of the transition to remote. And the idea is that nonprofits can connect with a volunteer that has really specific subject matter expertise around a challenge that if you're wrestling with something and you're thinking, if I could just talk to an expert in this and just get a little bit of guidance or just get some feedback, get an objective opinion or expert, it would be really helpful in me being able to solve this problem or provide more clarity on XYZ. So the process is that so Common Impact is, I'll share, we're working with a variety of corporate partners. We've seen a lot of excitement about this model from our corporate partners who are excited to continue to engage in volunteering, recognizing obviously that is going to continue to be virtual or remote for the foreseeable future, but are also seeing that their own employees are feeling strapped for capacity and limited in time, and so they're really seeing this as a really easy or direct and easy or light lift for their employees to be able to get involved. So there is just a very brief application survey that you complete that comes to Common Impact. We then review our cohort of volunteers from the different corporate partners that we're working with. We then match to a volunteer that according to the skill set fit. You would complete a little bit of prep work. So it's really helpful to go into the conversation with kind of a set of questions, and just so that you can be as efficient and effective as possible with both of your time. And then you participate in about a 1 hour to 1.5 hour call with that person who's a subject matter expert. So the types of challenges that you might want to think about are more like strategy level. So, hey, we're thinking about taking this process remote. What are some things that we could think about? What are some technology considerations, if that's your concern? Or what are some marketing considerations? Or what is the best way to structure our pre-event communications? We recently had somebody that reached out and did not have any policies in place for a remote workforce. And since they're going to be staying remote through the remainder of the year, they just wanted some guidance on some kind of high level areas that they should build out policies on in their handbook. Had another nonprofit that experienced a data breach and needed to get some really quick expertise on kind of what their risk level was. and then also what what their steps in communicating to their stakeholders should be. Other folks, I know that we actually have connected with experts around deciding what technology, virtual meeting technology, would be best suited for our needs as we're managing things like days of service and team events. And so I know that our COO connected with an expert just to ask a few questions around that. So the process is managed by Common Impact, and we again are working with a pool of corporate volunteers. And so as we have companies that are onboarding, we are working with them to recruit employees that fill out a skills survey, and then they kind of enter into a cohort or database of volunteers that are available to be matched. So you want to think about this as, approach this as, help us to think about this strategy, or I have a few questions, or I could use some guidance from an expert around XYZ, rather than, we are starting from scratch and need a brand new database. Is Salesforce better for us than Volgistics? That's more of a day of service or a team consulting. Just think about these as challenges. If you could really, approach it as, if I could connect with an expert quickly around XYZ, this would help me to formalize or kind of gain clarity on this strategy. We will send out the application following this call. This is open and available to everybody in the cohort and other nonprofits. And so really encourage folks to think about using that as an option. I know I hope it's okay if I can put kind of Easter seals on the hot seat. And I know that you all are kind of in process here. Are you able to share any kind of reflections about the process that you all are going through? I don't know if Chrissy or Michelle could speak up.
Hi, it's Michael Ann. Well, as of right now, we have a virtual meeting scheduled with our contact at TIAA on September 8th. But as far as that is concerned, we're still kind of working through exactly what processes and steps that we're going to be taking with her so that we can make sure we get the right type of assistance from her.
Great. And can you share a little bit about the challenge that you're going to be discussing?
It will be with Turkey Trot and turning everything into a virtual event, how to successfully market that so that we can at least continue to have a higher percentage of the market share as we've previously had with Turkey Trot, whereas before we had...
I'll back up a little bit though and let everyone know. So Turkey Trot typically happened on Thanksgiving Day. It had between 7,000 and 8,000 participants, as well as families, etc. So it was like a family tradition. Everybody got a pumpkin pie. So kind of giving you a little bit of background of what she's talking about. So we have already kind of tried to pivot, whereas everyone hates the word virtual, especially when it comes to a race. We're already brainstorming some of the things that we can do to engage the participants. So it's not just go run it and turn in your times or go run it on your own. We're going to come up with some different race courses, some different costume contests, some different photo opportunities where they can upload to a certain tag. So we're going to go to TIA, and ask for their assistance in kind of the same kind of thing. Like, how can we best leverage this event to hopefully have some success?
Creative engagement. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Wonderful. So thanks so much. We're excited to, watch the progress there, and for you all to have moved forward with that. So the Pro Bono Hotline being one opportunity. We also know we've talked a bit about day of service. So a day of service is, just one day where a group of volunteers would kind of gather around addressing a really specific challenge. So a small group of volunteers, maybe 4 to 8, typically from the same company, would really work together to develop a solution or address a challenge or document a set of recommendations around a really specific nonprofit challenge. So like a vendor recommendation could be a really nice fit for this type of approach. So you'd want to have a really clear project scope or description, which is a process that you all have been going through already. I know many of you have a pretty defined project, that might be something, you know, that might still be the one or the direction that you want to be heading in, or you might want to rescope a new project just based on, again, this new reality. You'd also want to recruit your own volunteers. And so this might be a way that I know we've heard from some of you that you've had interest or communication with corporate partners that have reached out to say, hey, we're not obviously able to come in and volunteer in the same way. Is there another way that we might be able to stay engaged? And so this might be an opportunity to say, you know, we really, as we are, you know, we're going to launch a campaign in the fall around XYZ. Could we have a think tank or a working session, a collaboration session with you all over the course of a few hours virtually, where you really help us to think through some of these things? And we saw this work really well with one of our nonprofits from cohort 1, who made a really great connection with a local company around a marketing project. And the volunteer coordinated really a working meeting that lasted about 2 to 3 hours. And so the nonprofit, this happened in person, but of course, you know, you could do this virtually, where they just came together and really and had a collaborative session. So the nonprofit shared their challenge, some ideas and strategies that they had been working on, and the experts in the room just really helped them to just provided some additional guidance, expertise, and helped them to build out a more full strategy utilizing, you know, their communications expertise. And so, you know, whereas we typically have a really structured kind of approach to a day of service, you really could think about this as, you know, connecting with your corporate partners to say, hey, we could really use a group of technology or finance or marketing or HR experts to help us with XYZ challenge. And if you have that really clear project scope or description, that feels much more tangible and accessible to the group of volunteers. It's then very easy for that corporate contact to go to a department or a business unit lead and say, hey guys, our partners over at Serve Ohio, we haven't been able to be in person to volunteer with them in months, and they're wrestling with this challenge. Can we gather together a group over the course of 2 or 3 hours and have a virtual meeting with them and help them to think through this challenge or provide some strategies or recommendations to them? So, when we think about recruiting your own volunteers, typically you might be able to work with, you know, 1 or 2 contacts within a company that then might be able to direct you or make that connection for you to the subject matter experts or the groups of volunteers that have the skill sets that you need. So this one does require a little bit of prep and coordination in advance. The most work that you'll put in really is around that project description. So once you're really clear about your needs, then that's really helpful both to you and to the corporate partner. It's also an opportunity to be collaborative. And so it's less of a, here we're handing off a problem, and then can you just hand us back a solution? Sometimes that's the right fit. Sometimes it's really more of it's really helpful for us to all kind of be in the room together virtually and really work together on this. The outcome of that, whereas with the pro bono hotline, it's more of you're going to receive guidance, strategies, talking points, that type of thing. You might, with a day of service, you'll likely receive something that's a bit more concrete. So, a documented plan, a final recommendation for a vendor, a list of functional requirements. So those are, while you do invest a bit more time, you also likely get a bit of a larger deliverable or kind of bang for your buck out of it. So some challenge types like building a new campaign strategy, selecting a technology solution, developing an onboarding or an employee policy. Those are all types of things that could be a fit for a day of service. So again, just a couple considerations. So start with your project description. What's your challenge? So, and you think about actually sharing this information with a corporate partner. They're going to want to know, okay, what's the challenge? What's the problem that you're experiencing? And what do you want the volunteers to do? Do you want them to do research? Do you want them to give you guidance? Do you want them to review collateral and give you feedback? Do you want them to create a brochure? So if you can be very specific about what you need, it's going to be helpful both to you and to the corporate volunteers. And then confirming the commitment. So this is part of that pre-work. So maybe you've made a connection to the HR group within a company, and just confirming, okay, I want to confirm that from 12 to 2 next, on the 27th, we're going to meet. You have 4 to 6 volunteers. What's our, what are the logistics? And then, here are, or what Zoom link are we using? Or here, I'm going to set it up. And then sharing some prep materials ahead of time. So again, here's a description of the challenge, just so everybody's on the same page. Here's some background materials. Looking forward to connecting with you all next week. And then really gathering together for a working session. I know that, we use the term day of service, and that can feel a bit, it can feel really structured. It can maybe feel a bit intimidating. So if you want to think about this as more of a collaborative working session, or a think tank, or we use the term flash consulting sometimes, you can really think about this, or you can really kind of title it in whatever way feels most accessible to you. But just thinking about this as an opportunity for like a quick hit, a quick infusion of resources and support. Any questions or thoughts on the day of service from the nonprofits, or I don't know, Rebecca or Lauren, if you have any thoughts as well that you'd want to share? All right, great. I'll keep cruising on, but I do encourage us, and again, this is something that we are happy to help you all think through. I know that we've heard from a few folks, a few of the nonprofits in the cohort, that they have received some interest from corporate partners. And so, this can be a way to leverage some of that interest. All right, and then a team project. This is more of what we think about with traditional SBV engagements. And we still do see, we still are working with lots of nonprofits around this approach. And so it's certainly still on the table if it feels like something that is accessible and realistic for you all. So a team project, thinking about, a small group of volunteers working together on a project, usually between 6 and 12 weeks, so kind of 1.5 to 3 or 4 months, and they give about 1 to 2 hours a week to the project. And so this can also, at this moment in time, can feel like a really nice opportunity for corporate volunteers as well, because it's, they can typically work fairly independently. They can gather together remotely with their teams to collaborate and work together. Maybe they have a 1-hour meeting a week, and then do about another hour of independent work on their own throughout the course of 6 to 12 weeks. For this approach, you'd want a really clear and more robust project description. So, a bit more clarity and content around, here is the challenge that we're addressing, here's the who, what, when, where, why, and more guidance on what you're looking for from the volunteers as well. And you can expect a more robust deliverable. If you're starting from scratch and looking for a technology solution, then the team is going to want to document your functional requirements, or document all the needs that you have. They're then going to want to research and compare a few vendors like Salesforce, Volgistics, Volunteer Hub, and then they're going to want to, analyze those and make a final recommendation. So as you can see, there's typically phases throughout the project, and they're consistently working towards a goal at each phase. And so that's a lot of, as you can, obviously it's more work and time and commitment and input from the volunteers, as well as from the nonprofit partner. And then at the end of that, you get a more robust, kind of concrete, content-rich deliverable. And it just requires a bit more of that ongoing capacity. So some of the projects we've seen recently, redevelop a part of our website. So, hey, we're building out a new landing page for parents who are interested in signing their kids up for our programming. And so can you help us to make sure that integrates to our database, or that it's the content is laid out, in a way that makes accessing priority information easy. Or, hey, we are shifting our services completely remote through the end of the year, and so we need a new marketing strategy for that. We are working with another nonprofit who, as they were executing some of their services remotely, they've recognized that they're reaching new audiences. And so even as they are able to manage or implement programs and services in person in the future, they'd like to formally continue with this virtual programming. And so they're working with a team to really develop a strategy and a virtual program that they can continue on, that will be a value add to their existing kind of programming. Or to create new collateral or materials, a new marketing brochure, a new layout for an annual report. Those types of things are great for team consulting projects. So what we have found is it's really helpful to partner with existing companies or existing corporate partners. So folks that you have a standing relationship with, that know you and are excited about your work. It's typically more efficient to be able to recruit from existing partners, and they're more likely to stay engaged throughout the project as well. Lots of companies are really looking for opportunities to engage remotely. Many are, participating in SBV or pro bono opportunities without necessarily even labeling it or thinking of it as pro bono, just doing it even informally as a way to continue to offer engagement opportunities for their employees. So, the employees are hungry for it, and the corporate relations and employee volunteering offices are very interested in finding those opportunities as well. And it's really, they just need the tangible, concrete description and kind of avenue to engage. Some additional considerations is, if you're going to engage in a longer term project, then you'll want to be very clear on the scope and the expectations. So we really need a team to stay engaged with us throughout the course of these 8 weeks. Here are the phases or the checkpoints that we'd like to see throughout the projects. Here is our final goal that we're looking for. So it's really important that we have a technology solution that meets our budget and can execute these 5 key functionalities. So, just being really clear up front, and all of those things, that communication does take time and capacity. And so we're cognizant of that. But also remember that your project can be scoped up or down depending on the capacity of the team. So working with a nonprofit, for example, that originally was looking for a completely new website to be developed and has recognized that now is not the right time with the given capacity and resources that they have. And so they prioritize this parent landing page. And so they're going to just really focus on, they're going to focus on the team executing that. And so that's gone from what was originally a 6-month project to probably about an 8-week project. And it's going to require, while it's still going to have a really great lasting impact on the nonprofit, it's going to require less lift from the nonprofit and a bit of a less commitment, obviously, from the team as well. All right, and then I'm going to take us through capacity commons, and then I'll pause again for questions. So we've talked about capacity commons a lot. This is also another way to engage. So it includes, this really is your one-stop online resource for pro bono SBV. So it includes all of the resources that you could need to support your organization in both scoping your project, so defining your need, and then it provides access directly to recruitment avenues. So it ties right into Taproot Plus, which is a volunteer recruitment platform where skilled volunteers are looking for projects. So you get your project scope, you get your description written, and then you can go live on that site and actually connect directly with volunteers. So it was built by Common Impact, and it follows the exact model and just approach that we've learned throughout our training. So the steps and the concepts and the language should feel pretty familiar to you all. It also has a lot of project description and deliverable examples. So you can see both. You can just get ideas even from, okay, here's some different projects that folks have done, both day of service all the way to long term. And it also shows you the deliverables or the outcomes. So here is a marketing template that was created. And so some of those actually might be useful to you also. I encourage you, go to Capacity Commons, and if you're looking for a specific resource, check that out. But it also gives you, and that might be useful in and of itself, but it also gives you really good examples of the types of things that can be created or what you might expect as you're defining your own goals and expectations. You can also save multiple project descriptions. So, I know that I am constantly thinking of, oh gosh, it would be great if I could do X, Y, Z, or it'd be nice to have a volunteer to do X, to do A, B, C. And so I might jot out a project description. And this is kind of you can save those via your login. You can save those on the site in whatever state they're in. So they can be 30% done, and they can sit there, and then you can come back to them and complete. So you can have multiple different ideas going at one time. And then you make the decision on, okay, this does feel ready and like something we want to move forward with. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this and work to recruit volunteers to support this. And you'll have access to a wide range of virtual volunteers that are looking for SBV opportunities. So these are folks that are already kind of bought into that concept and are thinking, I'd like to donate my professional skills. Let me find an opportunity to do that. So, some types of challenges that you might think of, can you review, here's our marketing strategy. Can you help us to kind of review it or prioritize, point out areas where we might need more content or more guidance? Maybe a financial or an administrative process. So typically our intake was in person, but now we're allowing folks to fill out an application online. What can you help us to develop a process map for that, or identify the right technology solutions? So lots of the project concepts that we've discussed previously would be a good fit for this. I've also seen technology trainings with, this tends to be a popular offering from the volunteer side of somebody saying, okay, I am really skilled in QuickBooks. I'm really skilled in Salesforce. I'm a whiz at Excel. And so I would be happy to connect with a nonprofit and just give them some tips, tricks, best practices on how to best leverage this tool. And if that is, and we can kind of utilize a real world working problem. I've seen a really great project, for example, with an organization that was using Adobe Creative Cloud, and they had gone through all of the standard trainings and were kind of muddling through it, but they just really wanted to sit down with somebody to kind of walk them through, like, okay, here's our annual report. Can you just talk with us as we lay this out and give us any tips or tricks? And it was very successful. So those are some other types of approaches that you could consider. So just again, some considerations for Capacity Commons. It supports you step by step. It pushes out to those recruitment channels. So where you might not have to spend as much time on the actual recruitment because that's done via technology, You will want to think about, okay, how will I vet volunteers, right? Like if somebody is saying, I'm an expert in QuickBooks, ask them a couple questions, just via email. Can you tell me a little bit about how you've utilized QuickBooks? Can you tell me a little bit about marketing strategies that you have worked on in the past? Can you tell me a little bit about your background with social media? So don't be shy about asking a few questions to make sure that it feels like a good fit. And even if you're looking for, or just, not in a way that you're saying that somebody isn't kind of good enough or equipped, but just that the skill set that they have does feel like a good fit. So if somebody, for example, has done risk analysis for a massive bank, does that mean that they can support providing guidance on the risk analysis for your small nonprofit? And so you might just tease that out with a few questions. So this is a really, really great resource, even if you plan on pursuing other recruitment avenues. So you could even document your project on Capacity Commons, because it goes through that scoping process through a series of questions with you, and you have a robust project description. You can then share that, save it online, email it to folks. You can share it with us. You can print it out. And so it's just it's a great tool no matter what step of the process you're in. And I highly encourage everybody to check out those completed deliverables. Those are things that were created by skilled volunteers for nonprofits. And as we all know, we face really similar challenges. And so there's just no reason to recreate the wheel. It's highly likely there's something that's very usable for all of you within those completed deliverables. All right, so I'm going to pause. I'll talk about some considerations, but if folks do have any questions, comments, reflections on any of the models we've covered, I'd love to pause and just give space there. All right, I will keep cruising through. So as you think about next steps and what might be right for you, think about the scope of your project. So and when we talk about scope, it's how big is our project? How time intensive is it? How long will this take? And remember, you can calibrate up or down. So if you were originally starting with a really big project, think about, well, what's the first step? Could we just do an SBV project for now around what that first step is? So, recommending a technology solution is a really common SBV project. So, and instead of having a team go through a 9-week process of all of selecting your technology solution, the first step in that is documenting your functional requirements. So getting a list of the requirements and the functionality that you need from a database or a technology solution. And that's a great day of service project right there. So that would be a great kind of collaborative working session to work with a group of experts or to work with a group of folks that are really fluent in kind of tech speak, and for you to be able to share, here's all the things that we want to do with our technology. We're not sure where to start. Can you just help us get this on paper? And they can help to kind of translate those pieces into a document that will then help you all to do those next steps in research. So, again, it's just about breaking it out, thinking about the phases. And then access to volunteers. So do you have corporate partners that you can tap into? If so, then maybe thinking about a day of service or collaborative working session or a team project might be the best avenue for you. If you've got corporate partners that are, that you have relationships with, or that are reaching out and saying, hey, we'd really like to stay engaged because, we recognize that we haven't been able to come in and serve a meal in the last 6 months, or, we really want to be able to continue to support you, then, going with one of those avenues might be great. If you are concerned about that or don't have access to volunteers, you might think about Capacity Commons or initially starting with Pro Bono Hotline, where there already is a recruitment avenue kind of built in. I do want to share again, I'll reiterate that we are continuing to hear from companies, particularly now, that are really interested in virtual engagement opportunities. What we saw initially in March was a response from corporate partners of, we recognize that we are essentially in crisis and the nonprofit community is in crisis. We want to help. We don't know what this looks like yet. And so with a lot of the corporate partners that I know that are in my portfolio, were initially really concerned about their employee population. So let's kind of triage the situation. Let's see how our employees are doing. How's the remote, or how is the transition virtual? Are we safe? Are we healthy? Are we comfortable? And now it feels like folks are picking their heads up and thinking about, okay, we're stabilized. How can we help the nonprofit sector and help our community? And again, they're recognizing that just is going to be virtually for quite some time. And then also, of course, staff capacity. So we've heard from some nonprofits that have said, okay, we've actually had to pause XYZ program. And so we have a bit more capacity for planning purposes. And so now actually is the right time for us to take on this meteor project. We've also heard from a lot of nonprofits that have said, we are very capacity strapped. And so the original approach that we were thinking just isn't going to work. We need something much more efficient that takes less time and is more quick hit. Great, we totally get that. So thinking about like how much time and capacity do you realistically have to devote to a project? And then also, can recommendations or deliverables realistically be implemented? So if your organization is on a hiring freeze, or I'm sorry, is on a spending freeze, making a recommendation for a new marketing or developing a new marketing brochure that's going to cost thousands of dollars to be printed might not be the best approach. So is there another avenue or priority that we might focus on? So when we think about, and I think we've kind of covered this, but just another example of how you might break down a project into different phases. And any one of these could be completed by a virtual, by a team in and of itself. So let's say our original project was, we really need a team to redevelop our website. And just to make it easier to navigate, we get a lot of feedback that it's too complex. So one project could be just a website requirements. So again, kind of sitting and collaborating with a team to document a list in the correct kind of language and technology language that includes a list of all the needed functionality. So we'd really like our website to do this. Well, that is related to XYZ functionality. So let's document that. It needs to integrate with Salesforce. Okay, so let's document that, and maybe even help you to prioritize. So there you go. That's a project in and of itself. Or the website architecture. That's really just the bones or the structure or the outline, the layout of your website. So that's always a key phase of a website development project. So help us even to sketch out, what's the framework of our website? Like, how should the content be laid out? Can you select an actual template online through WordPress that we can follow and just make that recommendation for what the best layout for us are? That's a project. A website assessment actually is a really great day of service project, and one that we see a lot of a nonprofit that says, we recognize that our website is really challenging. We would like to either update it or completely redevelop it, but we're not really sure what we should prioritize. So can we have a team really analyze and assess our website and then make a list of things that should be changed? So things like, you should include more pictures, you should break apart this content, you should have a separate landing page for parents or students. So those would be the types of recommendations that could come out of a website assessment. So those would be all types of things that would be included if we were going to go through a 6-month website redesign process. Those would all be phases in the process for the team. But in this, in this climate, it could make sense to just really break those up and have those as projects on their own. All right, so great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about now transition to the program components. So as you all know, you've been contacted by either Lauren or Christina or I to participate in monthly coaching calls. So those will continue to be available to you as you move forward, or if and when you move forward with the program. That Common Impact and Serve Ohio are here to provide you customized support and guidance. We'll be sending out monthly resource emails. So these will be really robust emails that include relevant tools and resources. So we could send out for, following today's webinar, we can send out information on days of service, additional information on the pro bono hotline. And then each month we'll kind of get a sense from the field, from you all, of what the needs are and calibrate those tools accordingly. We'll have monthly training webinars like this one, but they'll be really specific to kind of to different topics and training needs that you all have. And then of course the ongoing support continues to be here for you. So if you have questions via email outside of the monthly coaching calls, we're here and excited to help. So our next steps, and actually I'm going to pause there and I'll see, Rebecca, do you mind taking us through the next steps?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Margie, for really thoroughly going through all of those different models and talking about, how some of them can be a little more digestible than a longer term project. I think that was helpful for me, at least, and hopefully it was helpful for others on the call. So let me talk about next steps. Many of you have had calls in the last few weeks with either Lauren or Margie, and some have emailed us and let us know your intent to move forward in the training academy or not. But I just wanted to kind of go through some official next steps so that we are all on the same page and we can all move forward together. So we are going to be sending out, after this webinar, a survey. And the first question on the survey is, do you want to continue to move forward in the Training Academy program, or do you want to, for lack of a better word, it's not coming to me, drop out of the Training Academy program? So yes or no, move forward or not move forward. And there's also an option on the survey to either maybe say you're not moving forward with an actual project, but you do still want to be part of the training and these emails. That's an option too. If you don't feel like you have the capacity to do a project, but you do want to continue to get information on SBV, that's absolutely an option as well. Also in that is, for those of you who want to move forward with the program, there are some questions about what kind of training and professional development would be helpful in some of the training seminars moving forward. So, so if you are planning on moving forward, just put some thought into what kind of content might be helpful in some of those monthly webinars moving forward. If you still want to discuss with us different ways to move forward, we're happy to have those conversations. Or if you want to talk a little bit about project scope before you make decisions, again, we're here for you, and we are happy to have those conversations. Once we get the results of the survey and you let us know officially if you're moving forward or not, then we are going to start setting up those monthly coaching calls, and we will send out information about the monthly webinars as we move forward with folks who are moving forward with the program. And then again, we're always here to support you, to answer questions, to talk through things. Any support that you need, we're absolutely here for you as we move forward with this process. Did I capture everything, Margie?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I would say in terms of participation or moving forward, really that just means intent to attempt to participate in SBV. So if that's connecting with, if that's filling out an application through the pro bono hotline, if that's filling out and like putting your project forward on Capacity Commons, you know, those would all, I hate to use this word, but those would all kind of count as participation. So SBV, is we fully recognize it, is going to look different with each of your organizations. And so, you know, if you think that you want to work with pro bono or skilled volunteers, you know, at any, you know, in whatever way makes sense for you, that would kind of count as participation. Am I saying that correctly, Rebecca? Please let me know if I'm speaking out of turn.
Yes, no, I appreciate that clarification. All of the models that Margie presented today are all models that would be in line with the program moving forward.
Great. Great. All right. Well, that's all that. Thank you so much, Rebecca. That's all that I have. I'm happy to hang if folks have any questions or reflections. Again, we're really excited that we had a really good turnout for today's webinar. And we also just want to reiterate our commitment to flexibility and you all moving forward in the way that works best for you, and our support. We are here to support whatever that looks like. And it's going to look, it's going to look different for every nonprofit.
Great. We'll look for an email from us soon, and we're excited to continue to move forward with all of you. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.